Well, we're live.
Where's the camera?
What?
Is it a camera or audio?
Here's your bag.
Oh, okay.
Welcome to the planning board meeting. It is June 3rd, 2025. And we'll start with the roll call.
John Jewett. Rob Walensky.
Marlo Herrick.
Teresa Finnemore,
Dean Lampton.
John Clark.
And Russell Tadro.
thank you. And the first item we have is in the, this Edison Chai?
Shed.
Shed, okay. Regarding your driveway,
The never-ending saga.
okay? You want to kick off the discussion?
Sure. So approximately 2 years ago and change maybe, I was asked to have a driveway permit, apply for a driveway permit. As I recall, and I could be slightly a little bit wrong, initially it was approved, then it was rescinded, then it went back into some sort of abyss, and then it was voted on, and then it was approved. But it was never signed off on. So it was, I believe, and Russell can jump in, but I believe that it was voted on, it was approved, and nobody signed off on it, so it just kept on going and going and going, and I think it went on for about 2 years, where I had not heard about anything other than the fact that it had been voted on and approved, but for some reason it was just never made official. I'll misspeak on some of the terminology, right? And so I would occasionally, nudge Russell to be like, hey, what's going on? And so he was like, you know essentially as much as I, we were waiting to be able to have this kind of resolved, not really sure what's holding this all up. So we reached a point where he was like, I want to get this off my plate.
Yes.
So he was like, let me just see if I can do that. At some point during that time, so if you look at my my acre of land, approximately on Centennial Drive, it's about 90 feet, okay? On the left-hand side, I'm gonna say the first, just for ballpark, the left-hand side is about 20 feet of that, and then there's the last 20 feet, okay? So I'm gonna say the left and the right-hand side. The left-hand side is where I would ask for a permit. I'm sorry?
Left and right looking at your property?
That's correct. So if you're standing on Centennial. So on the left-hand side is where I had filed for the permit that was voted on but never signed off on. The right-hand side, and a little background was, at one point, many, many moons ago, this used to be two contiguous lots side by side. When I had purchased them, it was kind of just like I think the town wanted or preferred the idea of combining these smaller lots. So I did.
Yes.
No big deal, right? I was like, okay, no problem. The right-hand side lot, which I'm gonna refer to as lot 2, right, because it's 1 and 2, were now combined as 1. My guess would be is at some point on the right-hand side, there's a flat clearing that had always been there when I purchased it. It had always just been there. It was just this dirt opening that if I wanted to walk onto it, or drive onto it, or lay down on it, it was just always clear. My guess would be is however many moons ago, that person, whomever he or she were, might have wanted to think about putting a driveway in there. Like, I have no idea. It's a level piece of dirt.
Have you upgraded that level piece at all?
So the only thing that I did to it was, because whenever I would walk out my property, it was always muddy and kind of yucky. So when I was adding gravel to the left-hand side, and I had done that, I don't know, 3 years ago, whatever, I don't know, a piece of property for about 5 years. I'm gonna say about 3 or 4 years ago is when I added a lot of gravel to the property. And then near the end, I told the guy that was adding it, I said, you know what, do me a favor, dump some gravel over there and just spread it because it's always mucky. No intention other than, if I walked on it, I just didn't really wanna go ankle deep in yuck. Nothing else had been changed, no grading on it, nothing, just gravel dump. So,
Why gravel and not dirt though, so you could do a lawn and such?
well, it was already dirt. It was already just a dirt thing,
To
so.
build it up,
I'm sorry?
To build it up, I mean.
Well, I don't think it needed, it was just level. There was no issue of it being too low or anything like that. And I do landscape design for a living, just so you know.
Yeah, so you know the difference.
I absolutely know the difference, and there would be no logical reason for me to fight the idea of putting a lawn there. Because all of that is just yucky dirt. It's not like compostable loam or something like that. I would have to have dug it all up, put something down if I wanted to try to grow grass. It would have been a tough task. It's heavy, heavy shade. no nutrients in the soil. If I put down sod, I'd have to put an irrigation system. So it didn't, but I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. I just didn't want to walk on that and just get stuck ankle deep in mud. So I figured while he had all this gravel, and you have to understand, I brought in over 100 ton. So the idea of putting down,
That's a lot.
it's a, yeah, yes, it is. It's quite a bit.
100
And
tons.
so, that is probably what I had spread out there was probably a ton. So we're talking about a very small amount, I mean, because gravel's very heavy, right? And so, it just made it just to be dry, that's it. So at some point, I get a phone call or a notice from Russ that says, while we're trying to resolve the permit, that's not gonna be able to happen because the claim is, I now have a second driveway.
Oh, because it would look like a second driveway with the gravel.
And I said,
Yeah.
you know, just because something looks like something, like a zebra can look like a horse, but it's not a horse. And I would sit there and say, well, just because it's a smoothed out area, its use, the intention of it is actually really important. I said, I have no intention of using that as a driveway. I've never used it as a driveway. And nobody ever came to me and said, you know, you're not allowed to have a second driveway, use it. And I was like, yeah, that's fair. I'm not.
It's a perception, it's a perception.
That's right. So I simply said, but I'm not. And I really thought, based upon just fair play,
Right.
asked and answered, I'm just not.
Right.
For some reason, that didn't seem to suffice. So I was like, I'm still perplexed by this. I was like, I'm not planning on using this as driveway. I thought, if I violate me, I'm gonna ask for permits. Everything I've ever done there, I have done it, I've double checked with Russ, anything and everything I've done has been above board, everything, right? So I said, well, I don't want to have this become this big thing, and I just said, well, what are the other options? If you're gonna make me have to do something to mitigate the idea of this not being a driveway,
Yeah.
even though I'm saying I'm not using this driveway, I have no intention, because I've been waiting 2 years for a sign off on the other one. In fact, my idea would be is a second driveway, I don't even have one. I haven't been granted even one driveway yet, so I'm still at a zero, and with this claim, so I said, okay. So then I pitched the idea of saying, just to keep things kosher,
Right.
what options would I have to be able to have people feel that I'm not using this as driveway? Right? That's what
Yeah,
that
if
was
there
my
were-
question.
yeah,
That was my
if there were
question,
barriers.
very simple.
Yeah.
And so the issue comes back as, my option is to add 4 to 5 boulders that are approximately 30 inches in diameter to make it permanently inaccessible. I said, why would anybody agree to this? I even said, I said, I don't say, why would I be able to plant a tree or something
Right.
like that? They said, well, you can cut down a tree. I said, well, but that means that if there was a tree already there, hypothetically, would we be having this dialogue? Because if the tree's already there, it's clearly then not a quote-unquote driveway. But if you can cut it down, then anybody who has a level parcel with the tree off the road, you can cut those and make the claim, you have a potential driveway across the board everywhere, because you just have to cut down a tree. And I was like, it didn't make any sense to me of like, so if you put a fence up, well, you can take the fence down. Well, I was like, I don't understand where the reason was of saying, why would I have to make it that I have permanent inaccessibility to my property in which I pay taxes on? I found that to be just wholly unfair. It didn't have any merit to me or any logic. Why would I have to have no access to my property? That I was like that, and also the cost. I'm not sure if you're aware, but when people buy large boulders, they buy them by the pound. That's how when people ask me, my clients, and they say, I'd like that big rock, I go, yeah, they're about $1 a pound. A 30-inch diameter boulder is approximately 600 or 700 pounds. So somebody's telling me to preclude access to my own property, I have the luxury of spending $3,000 to $4,000 to block access to my own land that I pay taxes on, where I have no intention of using the driveway. I was like, I don't know why anybody would agree to this. Just on common sense, why would anybody do that? Why would anybody bestow this upon me? Because I said, it makes no rational sense. If I tell you I'm not using it as a driveway, I would hope people would say, that's fair enough. If I violate that law, that rule, hit me with every fine known to mankind. Do it. I was like, I'm completely okay with somebody penalizing me if I violate this, but I have no intention of. Somebody said to me, I think it was Russell, that I had a camper on the property, so it looks like a driveway. I had sent Russell a message earlier to say, literally, I'm gonna read this is what I wrote to him, because I wanted to get ahead of this. I said, hey Russell and Scout. Scout is my neighbor across the street. He serves in the National Guard. he's a good guy. And he owns a boat, he owns a camper, he owns a whole bunch of different things. The town had come to him and said, you have to move your camper off the road for the winter. So he had asked me, you have that empty lot over there. I said, I don't care, but I just want to make sure because I don't want to get caught up as it being perceived as a driveway. So I wrote to Russell and I said, hey, Russell and Scout. Scout is my neighbor across the street. He's in the military and a really good guy. The reason I'm emailing you is to let you know that I'm letting Scout park his camper off the road in my lower clearing. He wants to get it off the road for the winter due to plowing. Good neighbor stuff. I want to let you know that since there are some concerns with that cleared space, it is not a driveway, but since I'm letting someone park their camper there, didn't want any confusion. I would have let him park on the front lawn if I had one. It's just an open space that will allow him to safely keep it off the road, okay? As always, I'm open, I want to be transparent with you. If you have any issues, please feel free to call me. You can message both of us if you like. Made it very, very clear about this, yet somebody says to me, I'm like, it's not in my camper. I'm like, I let him just have access. I said, just because I was just being a good doobie, just to have him get it off the road without being fined. But then even with that, I'm still being called out to being like, use this. I'm not sure how to navigate this because I'm just trying to be reasonable.
Were there other options you were given besides the boulders?
No,
Is it hard to see that letter?
Well, that was the decision the board made at the last meeting.
Okay, I thought we had other options besides this.
I had actually asked him if there were others, like putting a fence in
Because I
every.
asked about that.
We did
Said
discuss about putting
boulders.
it back to the original.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So I'm trying to put this in picture.
Sure,
You've got driveway number one,
Yeah.
which you applied for a permit for,
that's correct.
which hasn't been granted yet.
It was approved, but never signed off on.
Okay. And this thing is just something that appears to be, listening to you talk.
Yeah.
Just bear with me.
Yeah.
This is something that appears to be a driveway. I have heard not the other side of this, but I have heard
Sure,
the whole situation. But in your eyes, this appears to be a driveway. Or isn't a driveway, but because you put the gravel there, it appears that you were intending to make it a driveway.
I would say that's a fair assessment.
Would
That's
that be a
correct.
fair assessment?
I would say, yeah, I would say
I'm just
that
trying
the
to-
perception of it is, I could understand 100%.
Just trying to put a perception.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with that at
I'm not
all.
trying to dispute you.
No, I'm not disagreeing with that. I would say that's
Yeah.
fair. That's right. I would say that's a very fair
So I think the
assumption.
problem we're trying to solve here is, what do you come into line with us on how you can make it look so it isn't a driveway and not get into a lot of money, is what you're trying to say.
Well, my question would be, is nobody ever came to me and said, if it's not gonna be used as a driveway, what else would you do with it? And if I said, well, if I put, again, I said, I really don't know, but if it made the town feel better, what are the other options? I said, what about if I planted a tree? That idea was like, no, because and so I said, well, but if I put a swing set over there, is that something that somebody goes, well, you can move that? Well, of course you can move that. If I put a vegetable garden there, could you just cover that up? Well, I guess you could. So I don't know what I wanted to do with that. I had really no expectations other than cleaning it up a little bit, right? And you're right. I agree that if somebody said that looks like a driveway, I'm like, right. But if you ask me, I go, well, it's just not, right? Then I thought that was just kind of like a fair thing of asked and answered, and I had no intention of doing that. You just kind of move on. But the idea of simply saying, I want it to be permanently inaccessible, right? Now I'm sitting there saying, hold on a second. This seems really over the top. Because why would I ever or anybody do that? Like, what would be the next one? Not 5 boulders, 25 boulders. Like, why? Why?
So I think we've kind of got two different issues.
Yeah.
One is the first driveway, if it was, and I know, and I can't remember everything, I'm sorry.
I get it.
I mean, right now I wish I had a picture of it, because I know I've been by it, but I haven't seen where you did but the two issues is, one is, we have a over 2-year driveway application that yet has been signed, so I'm not quite sure. And there could be issues to why, so we should figure that out, number one, and then number two, maybe we can discuss, some other ways. I mean, it's just like anything, Edison, you go, I think there might have been a little bit in the beginning, of what I can kind of remember, is you said you were gonna do one thing and you kind of did another. And now, don't ask me exactly what it was, because I can't remember, but I do think there was a little bump in the road. If anybody wants to kick in,
Yeah, I
it
can
was
tell you what
here.
it was. The bump in the road initially was, and this, maybe this will jog your memory, okay? Was that I had to have the land surveyed from a wetland specialist which I did.
Yep,
And so, and then there was a gentleman that was here.
because where you wanted to put it, they were, you know.
It was high and low ground.
Yeah.
And so I made sure it was staked out from a wetland specialist. There was a gentleman that was on the board at the time. I believe his background was forestry, okay? And he disputed the findings of the wetland specialist. So it was back and forth with emails, even with the state person, that was like, I don't understand what your contention is. The person Edison hired sits on the board for wetland specialists and trains people in wetland specialists, like he hired the right guy. But if you don't believe that's accurate, like that's just on you. I can't engage you anymore because it's just like, it was just a strange thing. The guy just, I'm not responding anymore because it was just, he staked out, this is the high ground, this is the low ground. That held things up a little bit, right? And so I was like, I just kind of just let it kind of just go along with how it went, and then I just followed the rules of the wetland specialist, right?
Do we have copies of the wetland specialist?
We do, it's part of the permit.
Okay.
Yeah, so that, but I don't know, quite frankly, when it was voted on and it was approved. I don't think I was around, I cannot recall. I just know that we joked around about it being over 2 years, but then it just never got signature. So something, I don't know what behind the scenes, just held it up from being signed. And so then all of a sudden it just goes all the way through, and then when Russell was just kind of like, I really want to get this off my plate after 2 years, because I was just waiting to say, hey, when this gets approved, I just know whatever the apron has to be and all this other stuff. I just want to make sure that it was accurate to what I have to do. And then all of a sudden it became another monkey wrench of saying, no, you have 2 driveways, so unless you resolve the driveway number 2, we're not going to approve this. I'm like, I have no approvals on anything. So it's just kind of like this weird thing of just saying, okay, you just tell me what to do. You know, just tell me what to do at this point.
What is your suggestion for the second area to not look like a driveway? What would you like to do to make it not look like a second driveway?
Tell you all that it's not a second driveway.
Well, besides that.
Well, I mean, but the idea of the aesthetics of it all, I think the perception of it versus factual though.
Perception.
But I don't know how to answer that because it's based upon your own perception, right? Like if I said to you, I'm gonna put a post on the road to block a car from coming through, right? Does that help? But then if I rode a bicycle on there, somebody could say, well, you use it as driveway. This is what I don't understand.
Yeah,
I
think it's more than perception where you already had a camper on it. So there's a trailer with wheels that drove on that area. So it was used, whether you say it or not.
Fair enough. No, I'm not.
So it's even more than just perception. It's
Well, but I
factual.
get it. But this is why I.
So we're just asking to make something permanent, and the idea that we tossed around was boulders because that's permanent. So they're asking you, how can you stop that?
Because you move them on there,
Well,
you can move
no,
them off.
But I have a question
Nothing's
for you.
permanent, but
Well,
what you're
this is-
suggesting
So this is
to
my
make
question.
it-
So
make
if
it
I
fall.
were to, again, if I were to plant a tree in the middle of that, what we're all gonna agree for the moment to call driveway 2, right? If I planted a tree there,
Well, it'd have to be 4 or 5, you'd have to block off that axis is what we're asking.
How about some nice scenic trees planted in there,
With some
4 or 5 of
spacing.
them?
Just something that's more permanent.
Yeah.
but can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
So why does it have, just out of curiosity, if I had removed all the gravel, let's say, so now it's back to what it was.
Okay.
We did
Put some
talk
dirt in
about
there,
that.
Well, I mean,
absolutely.
I wasn't there, so I can't speak to.
No, we were just tossing out ideas, but now that you're here, we
That
can
was
actually
an
talk
idea.
and engage you.
So if I had a dump truck filled with dirt,
Lawn,
whatever. It
make it
doesn't-
a lawn.
Well, but then I have to get rid of all the gravel and all that.
Well, see,
But what I'm simply saying is, what
You
I'm
do have to
saying,
do something, yes.
but I have a question for you. So if I turned it into a lawn, let's say I follow you, right? I put down loam, I put down seed, and I grow grass. And my neighbor over here, I said, yeah, over the winter you can park it on my lawn. Am I in violation? Like, is somebody gonna say to me, man, that guy really just played it cute because he's still
as
up.
long as you bring it in through driveway number 1, and I'm looking at our fire chief and other people who have more experience with this than I do.
Well, there's no access, there will be no way of being able to do it through driveway 1.
Well, then I
You
guess
can't go
that
across.
becomes that becomes another question that we need to,
Yeah, you can't go
Yeah.
across from one. I
Because
have
the other
to,
thing is drainage and
yeah.
everything else, I know I could talk more about that, but because it's level now,
Yep, well, it's always been level.
I don't know, I haven't seen it before that. I know the road agent had gone out and looked at the driveway initially a couple years back when we talked about the
Yep.
first one. But there was also some waterway that was shifted by shoveling.
Yep.
Okay.
Well,
And we did actually go out and look at the.
No, I understand that, and I have no issue with that, because there's really nothing to, the waterway that you're referring to, that swale, was the original swale. So it was cleared out there with like a hoe and a leaf blower, and the only reason why that swale had been abandoned was because the water from the culvert breached. So originally, if you see the angle of the culvert, it was designed to come out on an angle, and it breached all the way down, so all I did was just literally clear out the original swale.
Yeah, but you also shoveled it around the perception of a driveway that you're not using as a driveway. So it's just, all we're asking is to come up with, you're not coming up with an idea, you're coming up with a reason why not to.
Well, because again, in my opinion, it is,
So you don't want to do anything.
I'm not, again, now you're putting words in my mouth, I didn't say that. What I'm simply saying
I'm
is,
asking for an answer, that's all.
well, but I'm giving you my honest answer. I have no intention of using it as a driveway, so the perception of it all shouldn't really matter. In other words, you're asking me to do something to mitigate perception. I'm telling you, I'm not using it as a driveway, so I can't understand why.
I think we're almost at an impasse here
Well,
because
that's right, but I'm saying,
we're telling you that it's more to perception. We've seen a camper there, and we've gotten complaints from that.
so if I tell you I'll
Wait.
never put a camper there again.
No, hold on.
Let him speak.
all right.
We intend, we want to make it right and give you a driveway. The first driveway looks like it meets the qualifications. That's not the issue. I think we want to say, yes, you're good with that, but just rough up the other one, put boulders there, do something to make it look like it's not a driveway, and don't park campers or other stuff that travels on the road and could be registered, because then it's a driveway.
Fair, so what
Whether
I'm-
you say so or
No,
not,
so what I'm saying
it's
is,
a
I'm
driveway.
hearing what you're saying, and my answer is, now that I'm painfully aware not to do that camper because of the perception, I'm simply telling you, I won't be doing that. Now that I've been fully made aware,
I get it, but you're missing, whether you
But
say it or
am
not,
I
that's not
missing
what
that
we're
point, though?
asking
Because the
for.
point
We're
you're telling
asking
me is
for a
not to do
solution
that, and I'm saying I won't
make
do
it, make it so you can.
Edison, can I add a little tidbit?
Please.
Personal tidbit, if you
Sure.
don't mind. Now, you know that little house in the corner of Centennial and Deer Meadow?
all right, hold on a second.
That
Where?
little house on the corner of Centennial and Deer Meadow, where the boulders go around by the stop sign?
So if I'm driving down, I'm not really familiar with the other side streets, so I apologize. So when I drive down Centennial, and I go to the very end,
The stop sign on Deer Meadow.
Not on Cornhill, but
On
on Deer
Deer
Meadow, the
Meadow.
other side of it. You're probably coming from Bosquen, correct?
I am, so I make the
other
left-hand turn
side.
onto Centennial.
Correct.
My point is, I lived there for a few years when my girls were young.
Okay.
So, when I saw your address, I decided to take a walk with
Sure.
them down memory lane, but I remember the way it was before, it wasn't flat.
So
So,
if I
I
had
need
the
you to
gentleman
work
that
with
added
me,
the
help
gravel
me out
to
here.
it, tell you that it was flat, if I had my next door neighbor there say, but look,
It's okay.
Yeah,
I
right.
don't wanna argue with you. I
I'm not
don't.
arguing, I mean, I'm just trying to explain,
Okay.
if the idea, I guess what I take exception to is, why would I have to have a portion of my land inaccessible because of perception? That,
Is there vestige?
Can I
We
clarify
moved beyond
that?
perception, though. We just told you why we feel like something needs to be done, correct? Do you understand our side of that? We want to work with you.
but,
We're asking for you to come up with ideas other than just take your word for it, because we can't physically do that as a board and hold you to your word. So we're asking you
but
to
may I ask you why not?
rectify
But
what you've
why can't you
done.
trust me on my word? I'm curious about that. Because if I were to violate that, it's finable.
Well, it's driveway number one, perceived driveway number two.
Yeah.
Driveway number one, you need to work on getting the permit, and you rent the wetlands thing and all that, and I have some understanding of that. So we need to decide on that. Did you go there today?
No.
Okay, where do you park when you go there? Driveway number one?
Depending upon the time,
Just
generally I park on the road.
So we need to come up with a logical, I think what our colleagues here, and our fire chief and everyone's saying here, we need to come up with a logical solution that we can all agree on. And bear with me.
Yep, please.
A logical solution without arguing the factor of whether boulders, trees, or what it is. What can we all agree on to make this right, so the trailer doesn't get parked there, as my colleague across the room here said? The road agent can do what he has to do, and the fire chief. And with that being said, we sort of all leave here tonight. What would you offer to us as a solution without further debate? How's that sound? What could you do for us tonight to make that a non-accessible driveway? Or making it look perceptually, as I think you and I are both saying, and so it doesn't look like a perceptual driveway. When we work on driveway number one, that's where you park the car. How's that sound?
To be quite frank with you, because we're talking about a perception, then I really don't, perception is just a perspective of what a person would believe. So I'm gonna sit there and say, I don't know. To your point, if I said I put a tree there, well, one tree you said, well, that's not enough. Well, what is enough then? Is it a 5-foot tree? Is it 6-foot
You
trees?
do
Like,
landscaping,
I
correct?
do.
So you know rocks, you know trees, you know how to get people to go different ways in driveways. You put up fences, you put up aesthetics. So,
Okay.
so let's use some logic here, and I'm just throwing it into your court as the expert in landscaping. What material would you put there so that somebody can't drive on your lawn that looks like a driveway?
So the first time I had made a suggestion to Russell was, if I put trees there, and the answer was you can cut down trees. So, as far as I'm concerned, my first suggestion, or one of them, was already knocked down to me without any merit. So,
How
I
many
don't
trees?
understand, why would 5 trees make any sense, because you can cut down 5 trees. So once the idea of common sense being out the window, if you can cut down a tree, I don't know how to answer that question.
Well, John said the same thing, you can move a boulder. So,
Yeah,
I think,
anything is
and
not
Edison,
permanent.
all you're doing is, you're doing circles here, so.
I don't know what the
listen,
answer is. If I put a
listen.
fence up? Is a fence something that precludes people? Does that make it look less like a driveway? I'm literally just asking.
It depends
So
on-
I can fix the problem, because from the side of that blacktop in 12 feet is Edison's property. From that pin, 12 feet back to the road,
So we can just ditch it.
you can do anything there. You
That's, well, see, that's,
can do anything, and then nobody can do anything.
That's-
I mean,
that's very logical.
Are you, well, I guess.
yeah, you guys figure it out.
Thanks, Emmett.
Oh, I got a phone call.
No, all good.
I'll be back.
All right.
So Edison, that's town property, that distance you mentioned. So, I mean, how can we work with you to do something that works for everybody without us going around the round robin here tonight?
I mean, look, whatever you guys decide you guys want to enforce.
No, but I meant how wide.
No, we wanna work with you, but.
But this is, so let me just clear the air here for one thing.
Probably like 20 feet.
I have a very bad relationship with Emmett.
I'm
okay.
sorry to hear that.
No, and I'll tell you the reason why. When I first came to this town, I was looking to have the gravel and all this other stuff done. I was told he's the road agent, he knows all. I had asked him, could I hire you to fill this all up? He says, yes, he's done this in the past. He quotes me a number of $40,000. And I said to him, 40 grand? All the material of the grizzly pack is gonna cost me $2,300. $37,000 in labor. I was like, no way. I was like, dude, I do this for a living, that's bananas. That's bananas. Then my relationship with him goes to absolute crap. And so I'm just letting you guys know because I'm tired of like having to play defense on this.
Yeah.
Because I was like, no, so I hired somebody else locally, had all of it done, including material, $4 grand. So a 10X factor, I was like, no, I'm just not having it. And so all of these other little bits that pop up here, I'm like, what's gonna be the next thing? Somebody told me to see a unicorn on my property. So have always been now playing this defense on this over things that I just don't get. I just don't get it. And so I'm now just, because I'm like, I'm not really sure what to do. Planting trees is a reasonable solution, but now when somebody counters and says, no, you can cut them down. So,
Why would
Who
somebody
was gonna cut them
who's gonna
down
cut
just to
them down?
drive on that property?
Well, this is what
Or
I-
take down a fence
I
just to
agree with
drive
you.
on. Then plant the trees and it'll be a done
that's what I
issue.
said to Russ. I said, give me some options. The only option that came up to me was putting boulders.
So what about driveway, we're still, again, bear with me.
Please.
I'm not trying to be argumentative. Driveway number 1, Russ, is that something that can, or committee, is that something that can be approved, driveway number 1?
Well, that
this
was,
evening?
It has to, it can be approved, but
Thank
the 2-foot apron never got put in place.
well, that was the original concern that Edison called about, was that he was concerned with putting the apron in if the permit wasn't signed. So he didn't wanna put something permanent down.
Apron for,
It's the, at
It's
the edge of
the
the driveway,
requirement
put
to
down
pave
the
it off a
driveway,
paved road.
which is the final step to completing the driveway.
So it's gonna be a paved driveway.
Well, he
Well,
has.
No, the front
Has to have a
apron.
3-foot apron.
Yes.
Because it protects the.
Oh, I see,
the road.
okay, I get what.
But I
you're
didn't
saying.
want to install it because I didn't want to be in violation, because they didn't actually have the
So what can
permit
you do to
signed.
guarantee
You,
us?
you did, you had a construction permit signed, correct? He's got a,
The construction permit was never signed, they don't have signatures on it.
well, that's because he said that he wasn't putting a driveway in and he
That
all
was the first
nigged
time.
on all that at
I've
the
got an
very
email
beginning.
downstairs with the whole history that I researched.
So-
Basically, it went around once, the permit was withdrawn, then he brought it back, that a driveway was put in. Then he went to the planning board the last time, Craig said, just put the permit in, we'll sign it, give you the construction, and we'll finish it. And then, now we're at this step where it's the perception of the second driveway, we just want that cleared out. The apron put on the first driveway, cause everything else fits regulations, and then we'll call it a day.
How soon can you plant trees?
So I'm not up here very often.
No, I get
No,
that.
I'm up here like once every 3 or 4 weeks.
But given the confusion, conflict, and things we're going through here, for your benefit,
Sure.
I think the trees need to be planted as soon as you can do that. And if you can give us some logical thought process.
How about the next 60 days?
Like about 3 feet apart. I think that would be
How about
wonderful.
you all tell me?
Yeah,
It all depends on what he plants for trees, because
And
if
how
they're
they
different
grow. I
kind of
agree.
trees, 3 feet's gonna be too close.
Yeah, yeah.
But there's only one thing you folks have to do, is the trees are gonna be planted on the inside of the boundary line.
Right,
yes.
right.
Yeah, your property.
12 feet from the side of
But
the
you
road.
get that, right? Inside the property.
There's a boundary.
And just to be really, just to be, make sure that we're really safe and don't think that I'm asking for very much,
Okay.
can somebody just mark off where they want it to be?
Absolutely.
So then this way, if there's a line, somebody just paints a line to say, this is the line, so I'm on the other side of the line, right?
You have a marker post on both sides of your corner of your lots.
No, not from the property line, I just wanna make sure from where the road starts,
Yeah,
we're
from
talking
the,
about
from
12
the
feet,
property line.
right?
So both of those are the boundaries for the road. If you go in off the pavement 12 feet down, that's how we get the 12-foot
Okay.
measurement.
Because there's other ones that also dictate from distances from the center of a road, not from the edge. So just that's the reason why I just want to be clear.
No, we were okay with those two boundary markers.
Town owns the roads in Pillsbury Lake. The
I understand
town-
that. I
the
understand that. So what
landowner
I'm simply
doesn't.
saying is, if you're telling me from the edge of the asphalt, I go 12 feet in, that's the line.
Yeah, that's the line.
Yep.
As long as you're beyond that 12 feet, you're
12
13
feet, 1 inch,
14
no
feet.
problem.
Well, how about going 12?
No, 12 feet.
12
When
and a
the
half.
trees grow up, they need to be on your
Yeah.
land.
Yeah.
The drip
It's
line,
a-
you gotta be beyond the drip line. You know what I mean by the drip line? mean, you're-
I do, so my
you're the
question
guy in
would
the
just,
business. I'm
but
not
my
trying
question
to-
would just be, is depending upon the type of tree,
Yes.
in 50 years, I can assure you, almost every tree is gonna be in
Well,
violation.
I think you can get some people that can put some trees in there, they're probably 15, 20 feet tall.
And they're gonna blow over anyways, cause it's all in wetlands. It's all wet there.
What kind of trees are you thinking?
I have no idea, because I know that depending upon the soil that's over there, they might perish, depending upon what's there. So, the other issue that's on a practical basis is root balls have to be
Remove the
watered
rock. Mhm.
like twice a day in
Yes.
order for them to survive.
Yes.
So, I'm not there, so the likelihood of these things surviving are pretty small.
But this was your solution.
Yeah.
No, I
asked
just
us
kicked it,
for a
I
tree.
said, I put a fence there.
That's why we said rock. There's no maintenance, there's no.
So
You
what would
drop
you
the
do for a
rock and you
fence?
never have to see it again.
I don't really, I mean, this is all pretty
Yeah, with
fluid
fence or
right
a
now,
rock,
do you know what I mean?
He said, put a fence.
I also said put a fence there, so
Would you rather do that then? Because
I don't, we're brainstorming, so if you're asking me to give a
Yes.
definitive answer right now,
I am.
I'm just trying to come up with something. So I don't, let me ask you a separate question. Suppose I put a swing set there, suppose I planted a garden there.
We're asking for a
But you
fence
can't
or a
water
tree,
that
I think
either.
is,
No, I'm just asking you that, if I put a different structure there, if I put picnic benches or whatever this is, that would clearly not make it a perceived driveway.
I think a fence would be the logical thing, you don't have to water, you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
And, I think we've tried to give you, and work with you, I'm not.
No, I get it.
Even leave a 3-foot space so you can walk through it.
Okay,
With a
so
fence.
what are we talking about, just not looking for definitive? how long of a fence or what do we
Well, that would
want?
be something Emmett would probably be better versed in telling us than me saying
I
that.
think the span of that new driveway is probably however long that is, right?
Well, the
Yeah,
more
you
people
might not
material.
wanna look at just a 10-foot fence, I wouldn't, I mean, that's, everybody's different, but when you come along, then all of a sudden there's a
Yeah, you wanna
12-foot
think your neighbors too, as far as the aesthetics. and stuff
12-foot
like that.
fence, I mean, I can see his point as well, but, I mean,
That would be easier.
I mean,
Well, it seems like the fence
I mean,
idea is
you-
not good, so.
you pay $1 a pound for rocks, I'd like to sell you some,
I was
because
gonna say.
I give them away by 18 to 20 ton truckload, day in and day out, so.
I have another suggestion maybe.
What do you?
What about a berm? What if he bermed it? And then you seed it in, you know, like with conservation mix, just like a lot of times, a lot of people do, you know?
What do you think of that idea?
If I had my druthers, again, because I'm not up here, coordinating materials like that is not that simple, right? So if you said to me right now, what would be an easier solution, I'd be like, I'll put up a 4-foot fence, 12 feet or 15 feet or whatever that opening is, with a doorway opening, whatever, you know, the 3-4 foot
Just a
opening.
walkthrough, yeah, just a
Right,
walkthrough
and so
steps.
if it's a low fence, then it's not that aesthetically ugly, because there are a lot of people that have short picket
Right.
fences, right?
Or a split rail?
Posts and rails, what I use.
Like a basic picket fence, it's the idea that it doesn't look like a driveway, or whatever we're trying to call, and precluding somebody from coming in, right?
Exactly.
So I could put up a low
I think
fence.
we just hit the goalpost.
Yeah,
Hitting the goalpost that doesn't mean it goes in though, right?
it can.
No, I think you can.
If it's locked in, what do they call that sound when you hit it? It's like a doink?
It's,
We just doing it,
Yeah, we just doinked it. So if everybody here is okay with the idea that I put a picket fence, whatever the span of that current opening is, give or take, I'm gonna say, I think the other permit, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was like 12 feet.
Correct.
So if I do 12 feet minus an opening, so like, give or take, 5 feet to the left, 5 feet to the right, with an opening, right?
A walkthrough open.
Well, yeah,
Yes.
right, so a normal gate is about 36 inches. That's a normal gate. That's like a doorway, like a door. A normal
Yes,
door is
yes.
30 to 36 inches.
Correct,
So I'm gonna call it
Right.
approximately 3 feet, 36 inches.
okay.
So we're talking about, if I'm doing the math right, 12 feet minus 3 feet is 9 feet. So approximately 5 feet to the left, 5 feet to the right.
Hold on a second though. Your driveway, that second perceived driveway that we keep calling it, is
Yep.
more than 12 feet.
Yeah, it's 22 feet wide.
So you have to block that span, whatever it is. You're not gonna hold us to a certain size and then have no
I was
money
just
to
asking,
spend.
I was just asking
You
about.
don't even
what-
need to ask. We're telling you fence works. Block the whole thing. Wherever you wanna put your opening is fine, but just make sure it's blocked, that's all. And also that 12 feet, whatever material, cause you spent money on that material, try to take and save as much as you can use it on rock, because when ditching season comes, it could be ditched away, it's town property, that's all. So if you wanna save that material, I would get it out of there, but the fence works fine.
Can you repeat that? I'm trying to understand what you're talking about for the 12 feet.
So we ditch roads here.
Yeah.
We get a lot of rain, you probably saw them
Yeah,
all broke up
I'm
on the way here.
well aware, yeah.
So every so often, Emmett comes with a grader and he pitches it and ditches the roads to protect them.
Okay,
So right now that's flat and then it's ditched right beside that driveway. So all I'm saying is if that's good material that you wanna use, that you put there, wherever
no,
else
it's
you
just gravel, I care less about it.
I'm just talking.
Totally, I get it. It just-
You're asking what.
Point
Stop
being
and
is, if he
suggest.
has to do his job, he might have to remove some of that. He has to do his job.
I have no
Nothing
issue
to
with
do
that
with your
whatsoever.
property.
No, I
I just don't want you coming back next year and say, oh, you took it all, well, that's just part of our process.
I'll tell you right now.
But the fence is what we, I guess, are
If you wanna take all of it, I'm okay.
We're not gonna, there's nothing on the docket to it. As it comes and as we need to address it, that could be a possibility.
Okay.
Fence would be a good idea, fence would be a great solution. I think we have buy-in on that.
As long as, yeah, it covers the span, sure.
Right. So-
Anyone wanna make a motion?
I can make a motion. I make a motion to make an aesthetically pleasing for the neighborhood fence that covers the span of that perceived driveway greater than 12 feet in from the road off town property.
Any second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I have a question after this is, so
Well,
once,
we want a discussion before we vote, so.
so once that is done, what would then, from my understanding, hold up the driveway permit?
So that's a second, that's a
Yeah,
second.
we're not there
question.
yet, so.
Maybe that's a
Settle
whole,
down for
maybe
a
that's a whole nother goal for you too, hang on. for
We're
a second.
working on it,
Yeah.
okay.
Let's resolve this, because I think
All
there's a
in
resolve
favor?
to it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
I'm an alternate member, I don't vote, remember?
I can still look at you.
You can look at me all you want.
So,
Okay.
let's go back to his original track.
So originally, the discussion had been that once that had been dealt with and the paved apron had put in, Emmett would sign the final approval. So the final, it's done, it's complete.
Yeah.
So I think we just continue to follow that process, that once that's done and the paved apron is in, we're done.
Correct, that's the process, yeah.
Right, so from what I just heard, if I'm understanding this correctly, I am green lighted to put the apron in
Correct.
without having permits or anything like that right now. So if I put that in, I'm not in violation of anything or whatever this is. Once that's done, post fence that is aesthetically pleasing, that is beyond 12 feet and covers the span of the opening, right?
Correct.
Then there should be, to the best of my knowledge, nothing precluding my permit moving forward.
3 inches deep.
I understand
12 feet
the
wide.
measurement, I have that sent over to me by Russell, I'm fully aware of every nuance of that measurement, and that will be met to a
It
T.
seems like you have a great rapport with Russell, I'm not saying that to be sarcastic in any way, so I think, as Emmett pointed out, the measurements are there, you and Russell work on that.
100%.
And
Yeah.
you move forward.
No, I have a great,
You know,
I double check everything, because I
Doesn't
don't
sound
live in the
like a problem,
town.
eh?
I just make sure that everything that I'm doing is above board, that's
I
why
think you are.
I just double checked everything with him.
Yeah.
And that was the reason why there was a reluctance in putting in the apron, because I was like, I could see myself stepping in it, and he was like, yeah, just. and-
No, I
you know
appreciate,
what
I
mean?
appreciate your explanation, but I think you're good to move forward.
Okay, I just want to be clear,
It's
so,
in the minutes.
Yeah.
You're-
Yep,
It's
it's
in
in
the
the
minutes.
right,
And it's on
and
the
the
video.
last bit
And
was.
put your fence up though,
I
okay?
will, no, but
Please?
what's 60 days, is that reasonable?
To get the apron done in the fence, is it?
No, just to put the fence in,
Well,
because the fence has to go in first before
It doesn't matter what goes in first, till they're both done, we won't.
but I just wanna make sure, the easier part for me, quite frankly, because the apron's is a pain, a little bit of a pain, because it's not as easy to do. Fence post and digging that in, I can do that, I can do that 2 hours. I can do the fence in a couple of
That
hours.
should be done by tomorrow night.
I know, except I'm going home right now, back to Andover, so,
So
and the only
when-
reason why I'm kicking it down the curb a little bit is only because I don't live here. And so it's, it's not the easiest task for me to come over here. If I do it, it's usually after hours, but nobody wants to start installing a fence at 7 o'clock at night because I don't want to get eaten alive by mosquitoes, quite frankly. So, and then
60 days.
is that all right?
Yeah.
60 days.
I'm gonna shoot
But
for
just
it
don't let
sooner.
us down, Edison.
I'm gonna do it.
Don't let us
I'm gonna try
down.
to do it sooner. I'm gonna actually even try to figure out if I can do it this weekend. Yeah,
That would be great.
okay.
That would be very helpful, Edison.
All right, I appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
All set? Have a great evening.
You too, see you later, thank you.
Yep.
I have a question. Whenever I've done permits to do property renovations or whatever it is, I have to get the permit first before I can start on any property renovations. But you're telling him he's gotta be done before he can get the permit.
We have a
he's getting
two-part
this-
permit.
Yeah.
So we have the construction permits granted so you can build it, and then we have the final approval.
Okay.
The construction permit we have, correct?
Yeah, the
Yeah, but it
board,
wasn't signed, he said.
it just was never signed. The board
Yeah.
talked about it, voted on it, and never got signed.
Yeah.
Well,
So you got a construction permit with no signatures on it.
Right.
with that confusion, I wasn't gonna sign it.
It
No.
is talking in circles, yeah.
But maybe in the future, when let's have that,
Discussion.
yeah, we'll work on that a little bit better, just so that we don't do circles.
And we're gonna put a note
Well,
with
this has
that one
been
anyway, right?
Circles and circles and circles. I'm gonna do it, then I'm not gonna do it, then it shows
Well,
up.
everybody's to blame, and, it's the point, follow the rules.
Yeah,
Just go forward, go forward.
Yeah.
that's the point.
Move
Go
forward.
forward.
Yep.
That's the ordinance.
Sorry.
Get it off.
That's
real
good,
quick.
that's a good question.
All right.
Well, into driveway discussion.
Yeah, where do we start?
Well, I put this, I did the research on the grade, so
I
that
saw
should be in
that.
there. And then we talked about at the last meeting
Yep.
about the driveway regulation change. This had been brought up by Emma at the last meeting, and it was also brought up previously. I forget the gentleman's name who came in, who lived on Lake Winnipocket, and said that, he was an attorney, and said that this wasn't, this process isn't in the ordinance that we follow currently in our driveway regulations. So it makes sense to codify the exact process and put it in the ordinance so that everything's correct and works correctly. And I just thought you should discuss the grade, and then if this,
We
Draft
can't change
option
an
makes
ordinance here,
sense.
though. That has to be voted on.
well, you have to do a public hearing.
Yes.
So we just have to pick what you want for the language, pass it by the attorney, and then do it. And I don't know if this is the process you want necessarily.
Why
About-
does it have to go through the attorney?
Generally, every time we pass an ordinance, we usually run it by the attorney real quick before we put it into law.
But it doesn't take I know you said a public hearing, it doesn't take a town vote to
No, because this
alter
is
an
driveway regulations. Driveway regulations are part of subdivision regulations, which the town voted on to give the planning board the ability to regulate subdivisions. And since we already have the ability to regulate subdivisions, that comes with driveways. So this is basically just changing a small part of the driveway regulations.
Oh, how to write things.
So what did you find from other towns for their slope, for their,
Salisbury does 2% within the first 50 feet. Andover did 5% for the first 15 feet. Hopkinton was 10% and requires a 20-foot flat area approaching the street, not over 15. Warner's the same as Hopkinton, and Sutton just says doesn't exceed 15 feet. Those were those surrounding towns that I looked into.
I thought you said
And then I've
your fire
included
trucks-
the ordinances and
I
the,
thought you said your fire truck wouldn't go in a 15-degree grade.
well, 15's pretty steep, but,
Did we talk about an 8% at
8%
one point?
approach angle
Right.
is what they're designing.
And I'm on 10.
in a couple of towns that I've talked to, they start out, the first 30 feet is
Yes.
5%, no greater than 5, and then they go to 10.
And we could do something like that, and graduate it.
I mean, I don't know where you got your stuff from Salisbury, but when I talked to the folks in Salisbury, they had no driveway regulations.
I have their,
No, I'm just,
right in here. It's on their driveway permit application.
well, I was told they didn't even have one of them, so.
What does,
That's kinda funny.
what's the best grade for fire apparatus?
So most of it's designed for 8% approach angles.
Okay.
So less than 8% is,
Oh, your truck catches that.
When you go to back in,
Yeah,
or,
yeah.
but after that, I mean.
once you're on a grade, yeah, it's,
Once you're on a grade, I mean, I don't know what Pearson Hill is, but that must be 12% grade there, isn't it?
At least.
And then
And my hill's gotta be over 10.
it's gotta
Yeah,
be,
yeah.
yeah, it's gotta be the change of grade, maybe, is
in the
probably
very,
more of the.
just in the very beginning, but after that,
So if the first 15 feet were 5% grade and then we moved up to the 10% grade gradually?
well, the fire
would that
trucks
make
are
more
30,
sense?
the fire trucks are 35 feet
Yeah,
long.
you would have bumper
So the
and
first
bumper and the
50
wheels would
feet
be
then.
dangling.
The
Yeah.
first 50 feet.
No,
sorry.
just, right, Rob?
Oh, yeah, no,
No.
you gotta at least cover that. And ladder trucks are 40 feet, we get Hopkinton's ladder over here, and
Yeah.
And the
50
tower.
feet is fair.
You scrape going up, I'm just asking.
Oh, I've ripped
Don't
off
even-
bumpers, I've bent up bumpers.
Scrape going up Pearson Hill?
No.
No, not here.
No,
Yeah.
because it's.
Yeah, I'm just asking.
Because the change of slope too is the
Try to
biggest
educate
thing.
me.
But I have damaged apparatus going into people's driveways
Yeah.
before, a lot of grandfathered older stuff.
Yeah.
Which is why the new regulations
Yeah.
usually choke that down.
No, it's good you both give a good explanation of the reason why.
I mean, we could do, what do you think, a 10% grade over 50 feet, or no more than 10% over 50-foot span, or what are you thinking for? What would work to accommodate a little bit better?
I'm here to listen and to learn. You folks are the final say. I mean, the fire trucks are 33 feet long, like you said, the ladder truck, the tower out of the city. I don't know if there's any,
I mean, we can
Right
up
or
to
wrong.
5% without an issue, we can go up to 6 or 7.
Where you had said 8.
But if we go higher than that, we need to go over a 50-foot span.
in the very beginning.
Yeah. It's gotta be less than 8 in the very beginning.
Yes,
So when, like, Hopkins says the 20 feet and then 10%,
Yes.
what you're saying is, but that's a flat, and I don't, what they call flat, they don't give it a percentage,
Yeah.
right?
So they say flat area, right, or approach?
Yeah.
It's 20-foot flat area, not 50 feet.
Yeah.
though.
Yeah.
that's
But a
it.
lot of these things, just because someone else does it, you know, somebody jumps off a bridge doesn't make me follow, that's what I was told as a
All right,
kid.
Rob, that is not
Guidance,
what I'm
just
talking
a
about. Who brought you?
But we still need our backlash before it meets the.
Yeah, so I think a 50,
50.
we gotta do, we
Yeah.
can't do anything less than a 50-foot
What do you
change.
recommend? I mean, you guys are the
Recommend it.
experts, right?
So what is it right now? I know is it just anything 5%
5% is
from the road? So what we would be changing is the first 50 feet.
at the 50 feet. you
Let's
could-
say you could do 8%, and then if you need to go to a 10%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And I think the support of that is, given the building that's going on in town, people who are in the town, fire
50.
apparatus coming
Well,
from other
well,
communities.
50
what's,
feet,
what's gonna happen now
like
is,
8%, and then
all the building lots that are
Yeah,
5% have been
10%
probably
after that. 50.
bought up and built on.
Yep.
So now, with the steeper 10% in the grade, if that gets passed, then they'll build where they hadn't built in the past, which is, it's good, I guess. It's,
Well, that's one of the comments I was gonna bring up today while you were here and the planning board was here. We had a permit come in, designed by a surveyor or engineer. I have to look at the plan to see what the stamp was for up here on Battle Street. And he gave me the numbers today, cause it didn't show the grade on the plan. The plan's gonna be 10% is the grade. So that's something the board and Emmett will have to discuss at some point, just like they did with the steels, to make sure that that driveway will work or won't work.
Is that the house that's not been built yet, obviously, but sits with the gully below it, with the brook that goes through it?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can look right beside a Pat Apple and
Yeah,
things,
you'll
it
have-
was
yeah.
Pat's lot that you
Yep.
can look over
Yep.
to the mountain.
Where the hell is that house going?
That's a good question. I just got the plans.
There's only about 20 feet there to do anything.
You need a motion for it?
To
I mean,
do,
well, I
to
can't make a
do,
motion on
to
that.
do,
I'll
yeah,
just say it and then you can.
5% for the first 50.
So we're actually a little bit,
I thought we could do 8. Can't do 8?
For
well,
for the
eight,
first
8 is where
50?
it's designed, so we gotta be under it. No more than
Okay.
7% grade for the first 50 feet, then no more than a 10% grade change thereafter. Because who knows how long they're gonna be.
I'll second.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
Oh, we can work with them.
That increases it because there are driveways that are gonna
You
need more
guys
than
are
we
driving the
have,
trucks, you
absolutely.
tell us.
Well, I mean,
8% is
yes,
designed, so 7% is under it, there shouldn't be any change. And honestly, it's for campers too, people, somebody
Right,
purchased
right.
it and they ground out with a
A
camper.
motorhome,
Motorhome, any of that
a
stuff.
box
has those-
truck.
So then, like on my driveway,
Yeah,
because
trailers.
it's flat, and then it
Yep,
goes,
Yeah.
it's over 50-foot span to change and then,
but you can see.
That'll eliminate that guy in New Hampshire Drive. He'll never get one.
well, or he's gotta come around.
Well, you can always go
Yeah,
for.
He will never go in where he wants to, 50 feet.
Well, 7%,
Yeah, that
7%,
increases
that does lift it up some.
Sure does. But,
He would need an engineer to say that it's 6%.
exactly, that's an exception,
Yeah.
obviously, but I mean, you know, when you look at the whole perspective, there's a lot of places that.
And I know he
they
said
have to
just the
do some
garage, but you
serious
sell the
work.
property and somebody's gonna build a 2-acre lot. and
Exactly.
Put a house beside it.
No, there's
Once
3
a-
lots they put together, I don't know how many,
Yeah.
acres it ended
So
up
I
being.
think you gotta
Is
plan,
it
no matter what they say they're
one,
gonna put on it, you gotta
Probably-
push it for.
It's
Huh?
probably
I think
planted.
he's gonna have
And
to
for
do
New
fire-
Hampshire Drive, the gentleman out back
What if
that
somebody
was here
says
the
that?
other
It's
day.
2
I'll
lots.
sign off.
2 lots?
I think one of them might have been
Fire
a double
protection.
lot before
Well,
that, though.
it doesn't come together until they.
Well,
I just we live in New Hampshire. I said-
No, but we are required, that's one thing we are required to
Two-thirds of
town
an acre or
is fire
something like
protection in
that.
the state of New Hampshire, the town has
He's
to
probably
provide, so if the
got
fire
less
department
than
goes
2
away,
acres.
With Chief Max.
Yeah,
you gotta hire somebody with buckets.
Usually the lots
Put it
over in
neighbors
Pillsbury
and
Lake
all
are
that.
about
Cause I got a 2 lot.
Yeah,
a
say
quarter to
it's-
0.4 acres.
Yeah, I got 2 lot, it's total and a half acre.
Yeah.
Chief Maxfield, you mean is it Maxie and Loudon?
Exactly.
Yeah, Maxie.
Okay, we have a
I
motion.
work for him.
To
change the grade?
Yep.
6% and 8,
Under seven.
Under seven.
Under seven, then 10.
And then 10.
And then no more than.
And that's why he just wanted to see if I was paying attention.
I was.
Yeah, I know.
2%.
No.
Okay, I'll second
Say,
that.
what do you build? You ain't building any driveways, you're on
Oh,
the
it's
grandfather.
just,
All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Opposed.
We didn't ask for your vote.
I didn't look your way.
It's better than it was.
All right, well,
And then the
Okay.
next thing that was on this was the discussion for putting, because if we're gonna do the hearing, we should do it at the same time. Put the draft language that I put in here for, I don't know if the board wants to read it.
Does this require a hearing?
Everything will require hearing for amending it.
The planning board may appoint a member of the planning board to be their designee, and he or she will have the authority to review and approve driveway permits with the fire chief. If the planning board does not appoint a member to be their designee, then the administrative power to review and approve driveway permits with the fire chief shall be vested in the planning board.
So it's literally the same line that was taken out of the zoning ordinance for the building inspector. I just changed
Okay.
select board to planning board.
but more or less, if somebody for some reason isn't appointed or isn't here or something's happening,
Then the board.
then the
Right
board-
now, the current driveway regulations don't have, the planning board doesn't have the authority to delegate one person to review the permits with the fire chief.
It doesn't?
That clause does not exist in the ordinance.
It just doesn't
Well,
spell it out, but we've done
It doesn't spell it out, but that's how the process has been done. So if we're gonna do that, and it was brought up by an attorney previously, that if we're gonna do that, it should be in the
It
ordinance
should be, absolutely.
so that it's reflected.
Okay, and then if the applicant disagrees with the decision made by the fire chief and designee, they may appeal the decision with the full planning board.
Like you did.
Right. And it worked.
It works.
It does work.
The
It's
process
just-
works, now it's in writing. Sure.
Yeah, that's the
We know
point,
what we're doing.
just to make sure it's clear and it's in the ordinance.
Everything's
I
negotiable.
mean, so we don't have to do that dance?
That what?
We just did a dance here earlier.
Everything's negotiable.
Round and round.
Do you need a
Like it's in
motion?
the teacups.
Yeah,
So if
right.
we were gonna do it, the board would have to adopt it, and then we'd have to schedule the public hearing, same thing for the other regulations.
Okay. Alrighty.
So we just need a motion.
Hmm?
We need a
Motion.
motion.
I make
10%.
I make a motion
I
to,
second it.
okay,
As read. Seconded
as read.
I think you two gentlemen are very important when the public meeting comes up.
Oh,
to
absolutely. Yeah.
Explain the percentage and,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Whether
It's-
I'm
It's
here or
all
not, it's
logical.
just as good to-
I totally get it, but there'll be people who will.
All in favor?
Aye.
I-
No, wait.
I can't imagine too many people being against it.
Yeah, you're losing
I,
reservation.
it'll be interesting if anybody comes.
That's the other thing.
Sell more,
Yeah.
Make
Make
it,
it- make it
relaxing
happy
it a little
with
bit.
make it easier for
People when they own, yeah, buy property,
People.
own property. Yep.
All right, and then the next part I wanted to bring up was, I included the letter where the ZBA and some of the minutes where the ZBA approved the recent ADU, and it came to the ZBA's attention that there's a conflict with our rules and our zoning ordinance and state law. So state law requires an ADU to be 750 feet or greater. Our town ordinance requires an ADU to be 750 feet or less.
Can you just explain to me real quick what an AD
Thank
An
you.
accessory,
Thank you.
it's an accessory apartment. So say if somebody,
Accessory
you finish your
dwelling
basement, accessory dwelling unit. So if somebody wants to finish their basement, they can go to the ZBA, get a permit to have an accessory dwelling unit, and then
The
they're
way I
allowed.
read that is the state is more restrictive.
The state's less restrictive,
Isn't the state, didn't you say the state's
750 or more.
Or more.
And
So-
we're 750 or less.
Oh, I was thinking.
So that's part of the
1,000.
problem, is it's impractical
Gotcha.
to tell somebody that
they're
their ADU has to be exactly 750 square feet. It can't be a foot less or a foot more, or even an
yeah.
inch more.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the point is, we should come up with a reasonable number that we want our ADUs to be, and then put that in the regulation.
And the state is 750
50 or greater.
or greater. So I would make a motion for 750 or greater.
But don't you wanna put a cap on it? You don't want it to be the size of a whole second house. That's kind of the argument.
What does the
Maybe-
state recommend for a cap?
The state doesn't have
They
a
don't
cap.
have.
Yeah.
a
Says 750 or
That's right, you just told me that.
greater.
Yeah.
So can I ask
I
a
don't,
question?
I don't,
If I have a house on an acre of land, or a dwelling on an acre of land pre-existing, and I wanna put that on there, then I have to deal with all the other regulations, such as being too close to the neighbor's property and the 25-foot line and all
Right.
that. Am I correct about that?
correct.
Because we're having a discussion about an EDU, and that's, how do you do that on an acre of land? You know what I'm trying to say, so.
Well, that's if it's detached. Like I said, if they already had a full basement that's above 750 square feet, they could just take the whole bottom
Or
floor.
vertically up, right?
Or vertically up.
Okay, I'm just trying to get a
Right.
visual picture of what we do.
Do we have the exact state language by chance?
I'd have to get the RSA. It's in the decision that they made. Let me pull it up and I can pull up the language.
So we can be more restrictive than the state, but we can't be less restrictive, correct?
Correct. Oh, I did include the laws right here, and I was on top of things. But it says a municipality may establish standards for accessory dwelling units for the purpose of maintaining the aesthetic of the community with the principal dwelling unit as a single-family dwelling. A municipality may also establish minimum and maximum sizes for an accessory dwelling, provided that the side not be restricted to less than 750 square feet. So that's where the problem comes in, ours is exactly 750 square feet.
Well, if you,
I know, I.
so up to, okay, so where it's saying less, then they could really have something real small, smaller than what you're asking for. Is that what you, is
Right,
that where you're
well, the
getting
state
at?
says it can't be less than 750 square feet. So
Can't be
anything they
less.
build has to be at least 750 square feet,
So 750 square feet is our starting point,
is your starting point.
but not to exceed probably 50% of the living square footage, or we gotta put some kind of
You got-
cap.
That's what I'm saying.
We don't have to.
You don't
We
have.
don't have to
But
put a
to
cap.
John's point, you could build a bigger ADU.
Right,
than
but here's
And have
the,
a duplex.
Well, you can
Well,
now,
hold on.
Bill, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
yeah, no, cause I'm trying to understand it too, I'm not really great
I'm
with
trying to
that.
help you, but go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
Again.
Hey, I might be grandfather. No, anyways, so that probably, I think what I was gonna say, that might lead into the fact that our building permits, as it stands now, mainly, we don't really have one, correct? Cause
So-
somebody could build a 3-story house.
Well, if
Or
they
a
were
4-story
building
house
a
if they wanted
single-
to.
So the way it would start in this town is they would come in with a plan to build a regular house. You know, something that we would review the permit as part of our building.
So they do have
permit.
to come in with at least a plan.
For a single-family home, you have to come in when you initially do it for the house.
Okay,
However, once they get their house, there is no permit for getting any sort of expansions or additions.
okay,
So they
okay.
could start with a teeny little house and then
Yeah.
just keep expanding on it without a need for a permit.
We're going, go ahead, sir.
Except for neighbors and lot
Setback.
setbacks.
Well, right,
and
they
all
Right,
would
the
follow that.
setbacks
Yeah,
still
yeah, yeah,
apply.
yeah.
Same thing with
Okay.
shoreline permits and all that,
Yeah.
if they're gonna expand into
So,
that.
sometimes you people look at me as to what is he thinking? Let me give you an example. And speaking with the gentleman over here, I'm greatly respectful, okay? He's talking about an EDU, but keep in mind, an EDU can go up like this,
Yeah,
without any permitting necessary, because now you're blocking the skyline of what other people are looking. And if you get the right structure, and I'm not a contractor, and you guys that are, jump in with me here. You can build the structure up and not have to be in line with any permit, other than getting the EDU permit, now you block the vision. And keep in mind the creativity of some of the people that might be moving in the area in the near future, and some of the concerns that that might bring. I think you and I are saying the same thing. I'm going out there a little bit more, but we're gonna start seeing people come into this area from other states. All well and good, but the creativity levels, I'm sure, are gonna be expanding greatly.
Well, we can,
We'll look like the city of Boston.
Yeah,
we
well,
can,
yeah,
we can, and I talked to Russell, actually, I talked to Mrs. Larson about this. I mean, we got a 24-foot ladder extension ladder. The new truck has a 28-foot extension ladder, and you build a 4-story house. It's a
That's why we have these very good
It's a
conversations.
long reach from standing on the
Stand by for tower one.
24-foot
Do we
extension
have a cap
ladder.
on stories, number of stories in the town?
Generally, when somebody applies for a permit, I say it can't be higher than.
But
what
is
the
that
fire
something we
truck
should
reach.
include as well as far as the ADU?
I think if you
Well,
had a
that's
height
what, yeah,
ordinance,
cause
that
you
would
could
make
say it
sense.
Yeah.
can't be any higher than what a two-story home would be, you know what I mean?
Right.
That's why I brought it
Yes,
up.
yep,
I mean, I'm not trying to,
oh, that sounds
I
good,
think
Be
most
creative,
places are
creative,
3 stories
creativity.
a cap.
Oh, right, fine.
The attic.
yep, right,
You could have an
if you
attic.
include as the
Mine's
attic.
always two and a half hour rates.
because
Yeah.
my question was, how do you build an EDU on an acre of land?
In the basement. Or, like you said.
Well, yeah, but you know, my
Or the
creativity
attic.
was.
Either the basement or the
looking
attic.
at the tower house, okay,
Yeah.
I don't want a tower house.
Well, I
That's
don't
what-
think that we would be, I don't think it'd be bad to have it be that you can't do any more than 3 stories.
Yeah, I think we
No,
should
that's a
include
good
that.
And that way you don't have
there's
a
nothing
4-story
in
house,
town
then
that's
you're.
for the
then
Two
you're-
and a half,
Yeah.
Yeah.
2.5, you want it, not a 3-story, because a 3-story, 3 boxes, and then you got your peak, and then now you're up there,
So like in my house.
I think we gotta call it a 3.
All of a sudden, 60 feet.
I'd say 3, cause even in my house, they got the attic.
And
This
there's,
is the
could
third
be living
floor.
space, right?
Yeah, somebody could,
Right, well, that's
Yeah.
the 3rd floor, but if
Yeah.
you do a 3-story and then the attic, then you're up to 4, then you're
oh,
you're
I
looking
guess,
at
I guess
4.
you're saying a 3-story and not including the attic, and
Correct.
in my mind, I include the attic.
Well, 2-story with the attic.
And in a fire safety issue, help me understand,
Mm-hmm.
28-foot ladder, that's 3-story?
It's the base window of a 3-story.
Okay.
So your
you got-
residential spans are 8 to
You
10
guys have to
feet
be
per floor.
comfortable with that, you're the ones climbing up the ladder with all the stuff on you, I mean, no, I'm being sincere,
Yeah, no, well, yeah, I'm John's.
especially when there's a rescue, I mean, you know, you've had those, you know. I'm just trying to.
So
think
what,
about-
so whatever that, like, I agree totally on that, not saying I'm my only.
You know, and then if somebody came in and it was in the right place and they were gonna do, put a plan together with, steel fire escapes
There
and
you
all
go.
that stuff, that could, you could,
There you go,
you
yeah.
could look
Above
beyond
it.
that, but,
Out of the gate.
out of the gate, correct, just, I
Yeah.
think we need to,
Well, and then, you know, you all make a good, that some people don't think of, because I don't go out and fight fires like you guys do, which sometimes your brain doesn't work to think, oh, I gotta get all the way to the top there to hopefully save that person.
We're weird, we're looking rooms and it'll be like, all right, there's 3 exits there and there's one there, well, you probably think that way too, but.
Yeah.
For most people, the station nightclub fire, everybody
Yeah.
got jammed up at the front door and
Yeah.
100 and.
Well, I think experientially,
without-
we're looking at some things that in the next few months to the next few years, we're looking at some things in our community that are expanding, and I think we're gonna see new things. And it's good we all have a good conversation about that, because I think it brings different elements of thought to what, you know, to what is acceptable and what isn't, if that makes sense to you.
Like I said, I think most towns call it a 3-story, and I know what Emmett's saying as far as the peak being a story, and I don't know how we say that better,
2.5 story,
but,
yeah.
but what's a half story to people, is that livable space?
Not
or
to exceed 28 feet to the nearest window for escape. Fire escape, I mean, how have you
Can,
guys?
except you get topography of the land, or somebody's got
Yeah,
opening, is
put
that
it on.
hinder?
And which window?
Then guess what,
Something,
put up a
yeah.
fire escape.
Not buying you a ladder truck.
no, I don't
Yeah.
want
No, but you're right, but your point is well taken, and sometimes we're sitting around tables and we don't think about these things. And that's why I was kind of throwing that out, and I didn't think about what he was saying, and that's a very good point.
So I think you gotta walk down the road of explaining that to the general, cause they don't get it. So the building shall not exceed a 3-story height requirement for the town of Webster with any livable space,
Above the 3rd story.
no, with any livable space being accessible by a 28-foot fire ground ladder. And that's the disclaimer of.
Well, it should be a 24-foot, Rob, because they're on the engines and the 28-footers on the tank.
Yeah, I'm just thinking if we have one, that's
First-
probably our max, and we
Well,
could call it that.
It isn't, that isn't, it's not the first piece there, and the first piece there is where you need your ladder to put up.
All right.
So when your firemen go in up through the door, you can put your ladder up and they can get out. I mean, the ladder isn't only to save somebody that's hanging out the window. when them guys go up into the second story, you gotta get that ladder against the house
Right.
so they can get out if they can't get back down, right?
Yeah, and a 24-foot ladder reaches 20 feet.
And if they go in the house, because that's all they can do at that time, they need, I think, they need the ladder to get out too, whether it be 24 feet or 16 feet. You know what I'm trying to say?
So I know we have that 28 footer on the new truck, but that's not the first piece there. I mean, that,
And I was just trying to be logical, and, because I've heard these arguments in other towns and other places where what's the biggest thing we have? So one can argue, we have a 28-foot, why are you maxing me out at a 24? My tax dollars paid for a 28-foot ladder, right? Why are you maxing me out on this? I'm just trying to throw
Well,
out
no,
any
I-
argument I
it's
can.
like-
Devil's
Worst
advocate.
case scenario, you're doing
There
the
you go.
worst case scenario.
Yeah.
No, I,
Does
It's a
Hopkinton have a
28
ladder?
foot
Huh?
lean like
Hopkinton have a
this.
ladder?
28-foot
truck?
gauge, you're
Yeah,
about
they do.
23 feet.
Yeah,
Heaven forbid there's more than one.
And a
fire.
24-foot only gauge you 20.
but there's a lot of houses, and then a lot of new houses that are gonna come, that you're not gonna get that ladder truck up the driveway.
There we go.
And
So
then
ground
you gotta-
ladders are important.
Yeah.
then
No,
when- then
I'm
when
just
you-
cleaning up the argument of what somebody can use. If we
No.
say we have a 24, because that code will reference that.
I've never had a
We
problem
have
with
a
a police
28.
cruiser getting into a 10% grade, but you guys with the big trucks, I get it. I'm being facetious.
Yeah, no, it's,
No, I'm just, I'm asking the good
Sure.
points that come up, that's why we need to have these discussions.
yeah, this is the place to have them, talk it out and figure it out.
Right, I mean, there's.
Either way,
time-
there's gotta be a cap. We've got no cap. So,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like digging a furrow in front of the driveway, that accentuates it some better thought, so.
and then if, for some reason it is more than that, like you said, then they should have to put a fire escape in.
People
Because if it's
understand
another
that.
dwelling, like
I
if
mean, I
you.
guess they would seek a variance, and the variance would be
Yeah, right,
based
yeah,
on
yeah.
if you do this, you
Because,
can have it.
because
Before
we're talking about
certificate
another,
of Occupancy, you
Yeah.
should have to have a fire.
Especially if they're seniors or,
Yeah.
which they probably would be in most cases.
well, like, that's kind of, that kind of makes sense, I think, you think 3-story, blah, 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 but it's because you want somebody living up there, and,
Does that help you, Lenny?
Not at the moment, but we'll work on it. You gotta hammer this, develop some language.
Okay.
That would be the next step. So we still haven't covered what we wanna do for the ADU.
yeah, that's what we were just talking about.
Well,
well,
that
do
was
we,
stories.
they can't think about it? You need to know right
You
now?
can think of, no, I don't need to
Well, I mean, let it bake.
let it bake.
I mean, I mean, what do you folks, you guys are the ones that are gonna bake it.
Well, maybe you could do a little bit of research again surrounding
Well,
towns.
do some research on other
Yeah,
town sizes.
then that way we're not, I think what he's saying is all of a sudden making a hasty decision and forgetting something, so it's good to use what your surrounding
Yeah, it
towns.
doesn't have to come out today, right?
No.
Because we wanna get this all in the same public hearing anyway, so we
Well,
probably.
this has to go to town meeting. This is zoning ordinance.
Oh,
This is the big ordinance.
So we got a minute.
at least.
So you got,
At least like
the
6
public
months.
hearing would have to be held in December for this one.
But we shouldn't forget about it.
Well, no, there's other things that we gotta discuss too with the zoning, and I'm sure we had somebody or not, sorry, Susan Young was wanted to bring up the, cluster development again. So I'm gonna bring that research back and can talk about that at a future meeting. And then there's the other fun part.
She
of it,
wants rules for a cluster development?
so that the town will allow cluster developments. Cause currently we do not, so we would just add another tool to the tool belt for developers who want.
What are the parameters of cluster development?
So their other name for them is conservation development, so basically you create a small group of smaller lots and you have a large parcel of conservation land where you put your septics and your
Yes.
wells and all that in the conservation land. And that way it still maintains the rural aesthetic feel of the town, but you can put more houses in a smaller
What
space.
is the acreage that you as a board would be requiring?
It depends
per
on,
dwelling?
How many units?
it depends on the units and it depends on how you're
Five
gonna
acre one.
place it, cause I'd have to give you samples of other cluster
I
development.
don't think
Would
so.
a developer be
Oh,
catering
we're not
towards senior citizens or toward midlife
But the-
residents or younger residents? How does it, because that's where I'm going with this.
Yeah,
Okay, that brings a whole other complexity to the,
I think that would be up to the board when they put in the regulations.
It just seems
And
kinda
that
weird.
fits- That,
Go ahead. you go, you go.
No, and I mean, that cluster housing fits in our zoning that we have now, or is that what you gotta change it to?
It's not a part of our zoning, so
Right,
you would have
that's-
to adopt a
Have to
cluster.
adopt it,
Right, so there, currently, nobody can do that in the town.
correct. No, I didn't think so, but I was just,
Right. Unless they got a variance from the
so
ZBA.
a
to do
cluster
it.
housing, how many clusters to a unit were you looking
Well,
at?
that's the regulations that the town would have to set, so I can give you
Mm-hmm.
samples of what other towns do, which I already have downstairs, but
I
that
don't
was gonna
want,
be
we don't
discussed.
need to know Bosco's.
Okay,
No, if I wanted to live in cluster housing, I'd move out of Webster.
You know what it's weird about it, and I'm not saying we shouldn't discuss it, it shouldn't be brought up, but we tried to change it from 5 to 3 acres and that
Yeah,
got
we
voted
did,
down.
yeah.
So now we're talking cluster, I'm thinking,
Yeah,
I don't think you can ever, I mean, thank you for explaining, because
yeah.
I've had discussions on the side with other members, and, you know, I'm not big on changing the platform. I like Webster the way it is, and, you know, I'm not in a position here to vote, but as a board member, I'd be very vocal about where would we put it all, what would it look like, you know?
Well, like Marlo said, we tried to go from the
Yep.
5 acres down to 3, and that was voted down.
Yep.
So there's no guarantee they're gonna accept the
Point,
cluster.
point, very good.
Right, the more people, the
Yeah.
more services, and the
Yeah.
more
Yep.
schools, and no, I mean,
you know, I think we live in a live free and die state, right?
Yes.
That's what they say, I mean, granted, we're very regulated as a state, to be honest with you, but.
and the state's looking to take away more and more local control at the moment.
Yeah, well, I
Because
know
we're-
it.
Yes, they
'Cause
are.
they're
And a lot of people
talking-
don't realize how much the state has to say. That's the one thing I've learned sitting here.
Because
It's like, holy
Webster
crap.
has
Yeah.
5 acre zoning, but the state has been putting out to make all towns have 2 acre zoning, regardless of.
Well,
But I thought that got shoo-shooed.
That did
It
get
did.
shoo-shooed this
Okay,
time,
I'm right.
Wow.
but that doesn't mean it's not gonna come up again.
Well, no, right. Yeah,
But
But
the
I-
cluster, sorry, I was just thinking about the cluster topic still. I mean, there are towns that have that for like senior development, right? So
Right.
it's-
Over
it's not
55.
just all kids in section eight
Kids,
housing.
no, right.
Right, right.
but it's
Now,
over
I
fifty.
didn't, I wasn't going there.
No, I know,
Wasn't
but
what I-
we're all thinking it, right?
Well,
It's-
we probably could be, yes.
But I know the problem they always say with the old.
So do we need to allow that though? Are there
I-
older folks that
Nobody
need?
says, I think it's right back to what
Smaller.
Mal, do we like Webster the way we like Webster? I like Webster the way I like Webster. And I don't need to see developments, I don't need to see any of that. And there's other people that think quite strongly, who've been in this town more years than I have, and think the same way. And I'm not trying to sound defensive, I'm just saying that's a very big step that we, as a community, need to examine very carefully.
So it's the old, not in my backyard thing.
Well, it could be.
Well,
That's what it comes down to, folks.
Yep, nothing wrong
No,
with that.
well, but any of the rules you make in your town is kind of like that. You know what I mean?
yeah, but I've said it before and I'll say it again, you know, the state, that's why the state's interfering, because if towns are dragging their heels too much,
Yeah.
you know, what is appropriate to allow? Is some cluster housing, I mean, zoning would figure out where in town that is appropriate. Is some industrial appropriate
Well,
for
that's,
Webster? So
that was
Well,
gonna
that-
be the next step.
that
Is
right.
we're getting ready for the master plan next year, and I was gonna hand everybody the survey they did last time, and start thinking about questions to put on the new survey. Because I'm hoping we can get that out with the tax bills in December, or when I do the inventories around then, so that we can start getting the data ahead of time to work on that next year. Cause I think it's better to have the data and then look at the data and determine what you're gonna do in the master plan after that.
And
And
I
if-
always
if-
think if we put forth our plan, it's better than the state telling us theirs. So,
We have a
Things to look
compromise.
at.
No, I'm hearing you, compromise, but I don't, you know, I just,
but I agree with you. I don't want it to change and be conquered.
I don't
Nobody
want the
wants it to
EDU, you
But
know,
it's going
20 feet up.
to slowly.
Well,
Yeah.
population's increasing,
Yeah.
illegally or legally, it doesn't make
Well,
any difference.
and we have, one thing we're lucky about, and it's not, it's just there's a lot of family-owned land.
Mhm.
Yes.
There just is. Now, will that last
Very
forever?
Yeah.
According to Addie, yes, but, I don't know that it will, so.
We'll outlast
so-
him for sure.
That's right. But on the flip side of the coin, I've got, 4 young adults and
Yeah.
owning property right now is like, I don't even know how these kids are gonna afford it, to be honest with you. Some of these kids that are buying $400,000 or $500,000 houses for their first house. So, my point is, that's why we somewhat tried to take it from the 5 acres to the 3 acres, so that you might be able to be a little bit more expanding. Whenever I think cluster, you think, people, anything, you just, all of a sudden, you got a lot of people in one spot that,
Well, I don't wanna point at any community, but I don't wanna see one of the clusters that I drive by to go to Dunkin' Donuts here in Webster.
right, right.
Well, no, I mean, my son lives down Forest Lane down there to Bosquen, and I mean, I went down there the other day, and I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
like, oh
crazy.
my.
And,
Yeah.
I've been delivering material down there on, Fire Pond down there, out in there, and I mean, there's Pamela Lane and this lane, and it goes all the way out around, and I mean,
yeah.
Well, even Cornhill Road is in Bosco and is chocker block.
it's just,
House after house
Right,
after house.
right, as soon as you hit the line.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
it's
Okay,
Just food for thought.
oh,
a lot.
A lot of growth in the state.
Thought.
There really is.
absolutely. Do we have any other new business?
you can only do that.
Well,
at
that was the new business, was I was gonna hand out the
Okay,
the surveys to
Okay,
everybody
try.
to start thinking about questions you wanna ask in the next master.
okay, that sounds like a good plan.
Cause I really would like to get a survey drafted, so that we can send it out. Cause I feel like I can do a straw poll, like we did at town meeting, send it to everybody in town, and hopefully get a good response when I'm doing one of my normal mailings. So I just, you need to look at it, just look at it, think of questions.
Did you get one?
Did I not give you one?
No, I'll get one from you.
That's okay.
Yeah, I can.
That's all
email
right.
it. I have,
You're used to it, right, Dean?
That's good, that's poor Dean.
No, I'm an alternate, you take that, I'll get one from Russ.
I thought I counted.
No, it's all
it.
right, don't worry.
Okay, the next item is to approve the drafted minutes. Anybody have any edits for last month's meeting?
Well, you had
minutes?
an edit, oh, I'll fix that.
Yes, you have an edit.
I do have an edit, and I
Did
will fix
anybody
it.
get my name? It's so hard.
You need to put it in there so it just pops up.
Yeah.
Yeah. No other?
Productive evening, I think.
Okay. Make a motion to accept the meeting minutes
For last month.
for last month.
I second that.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Because I wasn't here last month.
All right.
You're missing?
Can I make a motion to adjourn?
It's no big thing.
Actually,
I
is
don't
there any,
care.
Are you in there?
old business?
I
Well,
don't know.
that's
Is there
not,
old business?
that's a select board, does new
Yeah.
business and old business.
Oh, well, any business then.
They do any business at the end within the RSA.
So the only thing I was gonna bring, because we brought up last month to make it official, if I am doing the driveways, we gotta vote on it, right? That was the topic, to make it official, because it was never officially done, so.
Things gotta be adopted first, right?
No,
So you can
that's
do
just
that?
the
No?
language, I thought.
So the process currently doesn't exist like that, so if we were gonna do things the correct way, all driveway permits would have to go to the entire planning board, up until we get that into the ordinance.
Well, no, I don't think, so we have nothing that spells out either way. We're going by past practice of at least voting on a person. I think we should cover that, put the writing in, to catch up with what we already do, right?
That's up to the board the way they want.
Well, if not, then we're in limbo, I think.
I mean, you could still approve driveway permits, it just means the whole planning board would have to approve every permit that comes in. With
I think
that.
it's certain, I don't know. I think what was brought up is by past practice. Past practice was,
Past practice is what the board has been doing.
for years and years and years, we voted
Since
on a
the
member of the
driveway
board to
regulations have been
represent,
up.
and then there was either the fire chief or the road agent. So I think we stick with the
So
past
you and the
practice.
fire
and
chief
right-
will go out and
Yeah,
view it, okay.
we were just looking to make that official last month, and I think we need to do that. I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
Moving forward, we can put the writing in, but I think we need to resolve last month's problem and make it official.
How does the fire chief feel
How do I feel about it?
about it? Yeah,
He's the one that brought it up.
Yeah, well, no, I mean,
Nobody's designated.
I don't remember, I remember the conversation.
I don't, it really doesn't, I just brought it to everybody's
Yep,
attention
okay.
the other day to make it legal.
I'm
Because
hearing
it
you,
was
okay,
passed
yep.
down the reins,
Yep.
but
But it wasn't voted on.
And we've all, since I've been on, there's a, which I think is important to have
Yep.
you from the road agent, fire and then somebody from the planning board, so that it's.
But I mean, I know Rob's interested in it, and I know Addie's interested in it as well, and Addie's a full-time and Rob's an alternate, so, I mean,
So would it be wise to have Addie and Rob?
Well, no, I think it's just one.
I don't think you need two.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's too many hands in the pot, however you wanna go with it.
But I think
just-
what I've experienced tonight, it's good to have 2 or 3 people go out together and.
Yeah,
At least a couple,
normal.
a couple eyes are always
Yeah.
good, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And if it's gonna be a permanent member required, I am willing to go back as an alternate so that he can be,
Well, actually,
Full-time.
this is gonna be my last, full-time meeting.
no, you can't leave.
But, yes, I can.
Yeah, you want to do that?
Yeah.
Leave the meeting? Or step in?
No, I'm just stepping down to be an alternate, that's all. Just to be here for, in case there are, members I can't make the meeting, I can fill in, or just for a resource.
If it just,
So where I'm involved, I just wanted to bring it up.
yeah.
You
Yes.
guys decide what you wanna do.
Yes, I didn't know.
But I don't think we need to wait for language to catch up to us. I think we need to resolve an issue that was brought up, and we fix the language.
So it sounds
I
to me
didn't
like
know
what
if
he
you
wants to
wanted Sue
resolve.
back, Susan back to vote. So she has a vote on it, was my opinion.
Okay, so table that till next month,
To
and
next
for
month,
now,
so
status
Susan
quo.
has a- Yes.
Then we do have a couple driveways that do need to be looked at, because I just got one in today, that's the one I just talked about. And then we have a final inspection for a CEO in a house, and somebody from the planning board needs to go out with Emmett to determine if the driveway fits regulations before they sign off on the CEO.
so on the Steels, we all went down there,
Right,
and, the planning board and all of us.
Yes, we
So
did.
I don't know, and
You
I
don't
did mention that to you the other day, who was gonna sign off on it from the planning board, but, the Steel driveway is pretty much,
I think it looks good.
a done deal.
Well, if I was them, if you went out and told me to change it again, I don't think that
Yeah,
would go very well.
Yeah, no, I talked with Mrs. Steele today, they're not ready for a.
They're not
permit.
ready?
The 18th, we're gonna go down
The
and,
18th.
and do all that at 6:30, so.
But they were trying to cover their behinds
Yeah.
because of what they've already been through, which I
Right.
do not blame them.
Right,
And I just would hope that, in any case, when somebody needs to get what's it called, the occupancy, where you have to go look and,
Certificate of
that we have
occupancy,
a certain amount of time, it should be within, I don't even know, what do you feel is reasonable? But, and I don't even know if I should be talking about that right now, but I just feel like there should be, let's say you're on vacation for a week, who is your, backup to it? But I wouldn't want people to wait, hopefully within 48 hours, or, and maybe that's too soon, but something so that you
Yeah,
get
at least
out.
a week. I mean,
Yeah.
we usually go out, Jake and I, or.
Right,
or
within
Emery-
the
Emery
week,
and
right?
Jake go out, usually on a Wednesday night, so, when they all get together.
So
um,
a week, yeah.
Within a week.
Within a week, sound good?
I think it's a fair time frame.
Do you think so?
You're not living in a city,
Yeah,
everybody works,
I get that,
so.
that's why I'm asking.
that's why I try to tell people ahead of time that it might take a minute, because we have to arrange a volunteer to go out and do it, so.
Yes.
If they know ahead of time and ask ahead of time, it's usually a lot easier to arrange it, like the Steels have done, they're asking before it's ready, so that we have time to arrange when it's gonna happen.
Yeah, 'cause we were going down tomorrow night,
Yeah,
but they weren't ready. I don't think too many people wait too long.
Good, no, and I wasn't even suggesting that.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that,
And most times you go down, then they doctor it up, and then you have to come back anyways, so.
I mean, you have, I mean, you got driveways and that's not too much on your plate, like you don't want somebody, you don't mind doing those.
Oh, Jake is pretty much in charge of all
Okay.
that, and then Emery.
Well, you know what I mean, you gotta go look at this and that, I get it, you have
If
to.
Jake goes,
work too.
usually when we go out on an inspection, not all the time, but usually I send 2 people together.
Oh, yes.
Not that you have to, but
You
it's
you should
just,
for safety reasons, you should.
just a lot going on, and,
So senior members of the department, you don't always have to go out, you just send your designees out.
correct.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're checking the smoke detectors and, somebody can be upstairs or in the garage to make sure they're all because you can't be downstairs in the basement pushing up the smoke detector and you can hear it buzzing, but if
Right.
somebody's upstairs listening.
Oh, yeah,
it
no, that
just-
makes a lot of sense.
It makes it easier,
Yes.
so, but no, Jake usually takes care of most of that.
All right,
Good?
Yeah, we're good.
You good with tabling it for next month?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
you just gotta status quo for now, or say something in the minutes so that it's,
It'll be on the agenda, right? For
no,
next
but,
month.
so you got the 2 permits, am I still going out with Emmett on that?
the
That's how I
driveway?
take it, I just,
Yes.
if we say, okay. Table to next, table the vote to next month.
Well, it's one driveway. We're not doing the steels, it's just the one.
No, I think the Steels, I mean, you folks have already been there, all of you.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of people have come and gone now that were there
That's fine,
when we
yeah.
did all that. And you
Yeah.
were
I was there
involved,
as well,
Daddy was
Mom.
involved, Marlo was, and,
Yeah,
they've done a lot of updating and a lot of,
yep, it looks good.
Okay.
All right,
Motion adjourned.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
a second.
All in favor?
Aye. Perfect.
It's good to be home before 10 o'clock.
Yeah, I know. God, and then, cause then I can't go to bed until I got a couple
why
hours.
did you guys stay out that late last night?
Yeah, yeah.
Did you go drinking afterwards?
No, I did that when I got home, Bob, okay?